Welcome to Wisdom on Wheels. Today we'll be getting to know Metropolitan Gregory from the American Carpatho-Russian Diocese of the United States of America. Welcome, Your Eminence.
Welcome to you to Johnstown, Pennsylvania, which is the headquarters of the American Carpatho-Russian Orthodox Diocese of North America. Small town, but a good town of good history.
It's an honor to be here. It was quite quaint walking in. I saw little waterfalls and reminded me of Greece. So it's a beautiful place to be. But you haven't been here your whole life. You grew up in North Carolina. Want to tell us a little more about that?
Correct. I was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, and lived most of my life there until I went to seminary. And once I went to seminary in Boston at Holy Cross, my time in Charlotte ended. As far as living there, and then from there I went to Atlanta and New Orleans, and then finally here.
So growing up there, what did you want to be when you grew up? I mean, did you think, I want to be a bishop? That's my life goal, that's where I want to be.
Okay, so me growing up and being a bishop was not anything that I ever contemplated. I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be actually a pediatrician.
Oh, wow.
And so that was my plan, and so I pursued that plan. And that plan, I got my degree, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, in biology. I applied to 10 medical schools each year for 3 years and was rejected 30 times.
30, wow.
And so once you get rejected 30 times, essentially it becomes I don't think God wants you to be a doctor, there must be something else. In the meantime, I had already started doing research, cardiovascular research in a lab in Charlotte, and that was going to be my career, to be a researcher.
So how long did you do that for?
So for about 20 years, I was in the research lab. I started as a technician, eventually became administrative director of the laboratory, and just had a wonderful time for 20 years with all kinds of novel cardiovascular devices, which today are commonplace. Coronary stents. I did a lot of early work with coronary stents in benchtop testing and animal models prior to human applications. Internal defibrillators. We put a lot of those in, again, research models prior to human applications. All kinds of other technologies that came along in the cardiovascular field.
So you went from saving bodies to saving souls.
Yes, that's one way of looking at it. The other way is I spent 20 years studying the physical aspects of the heart, and now I'm spending time with the spiritual aspects of the heart. And so when you go to confession, I actually know what part of the heart that sin is hiding behind, like come out from behind that left papillary muscle, because I can see you there. But it was a great transition. God never wastes stuff. So even though the calling to the priesthood came when I was 17 and I denied it, he eventually got me in my early 40s, but he didn't waste what I had learned in the interim. And so I was very pleased to land where I've landed.
What does your day-to-day life look like as a bishop?
As a bishop, day-to-day depends on if I'm traveling or not, which most hierarchs are traveling at some point. But I'm usually up by 7 and do some work in the house, opening with prayers and beginning to focus on what needs to be done. Eventually I get over to the office and take care of any meetings that have been set up, any correspondence that needs to be done. Of course, email is a constant flow of information, and so you're constantly working on that. The day runs long many times, and because I live next to where the office is in the Chancery, I can go grab a quick bite to eat for lunch or for dinner and then get back to the office. Many nights working until 10 o'clock. I typically don't go to sleep before 1 or 2.
That is a long day.
Yes, but somehow God gives me the strength to do it.
We want a little bit more about you. And so First, I just want to know, do you have any hobbies?
Hobbies? Sure. I have several. Since about the age of 6, I started collecting stamps. I have a little bit of a special area that I like stamps with penguins.
Oh.
As a biologist, my favorite animal was a penguin, and so I have collected stamps with penguins. Another hobby that I've had since the age of 6 is coin collecting. I would collect wheat pennies from my father's register as a little kid, and eventually that collection grew into all kinds of coins from around the world. Another hobby that I have is amateur astronomy. I love looking through my telescope, and it has given me lots of pleasure. There's lots of wonder there, and every time I look through it, I say, wow, look what God has created for us to look at.
I remember back in seminary, because you were my dean of students.
Yes, I remember when you came.
Yes, and I remember you sometimes would get pizza.
Yes.
And as a Chicago boy, I got to ask the question, since you're unbiased, you're outside of Chicago and New York and all these places, between Chicago, New York, and Detroit, who's got the best pizza?
Well, I'll answer it this way. When I'm in Chicago, it's Chicago pizza. When I'm on the East Coast, it's New York pizza. And when I'm in the Detroit area, which is occasionally, it's Detroit pizza. I love pizza. It's actually my favorite food. Pepperoni is number 1. Cheeseburgers are number 2.
Okay.
And so, of course, the doctor would say you need to have salads. I try to have at least one salad, and usually the last meal of the day is a nice salad.
Wow.
And so typically, for that kind of stuff, wherever I am, I like to enjoy the local pizza just to get the flavor of it.
That works, fair, all's fair in that way. Does Johnstown have a particular cuisine that people come here for, that they rate for?
Johnstown is famous for a dessert.
Okay.
And the dessert is called a gob.
Gob.
G-O-B. And it is a sort of a cupcake split in the middle with some kind of filling. And of course, this particular area had lots of immigrants that worked in the coal mines and the steel mills that were in the area, and so a lot of different cuisine of the Slavic lands have made it into the local sort of food chain, if we can say. And so there are a lot of pierogies, a lot of chalupki, halushki, things that I never had in my life until I became the bishop of the area.
Tell me a little bit more about penguins. Why are they your favorite?
Penguins are amazing to me because they are birds that swim. They don't fly, but they do have wings. They look sort of like human beings. Some have even said they look like tuxedos wearing in these birds. And I remember one time where we were at Holy Cross, and we received about 30 inches of snow overnight. And it was a Saturday into a Sunday, which meant none of the seminarians would be able to go to their parish assignment, so we all went up to the chapel for liturgy that day. And as we were walking up the hill from the dorm, we looked like a bunch of penguins in the snow walking up the hill, because all of us were in our cassocks. And so I've always been fascinated by them. I like them, and so I collect them in different ways.
Wow. That imagery of all of the seminarians walking up the hill reminds me of the Blues Brothers. They would call the nuns the penguins.
Yes, exactly.
What's your dream vacation?
Dream vacation. Before I became a monastic, I would say going to the mountains and spending time for a week on the Appalachian Trail or the Blue Ridge Parkway in the mountains of North Carolina and Virginia. I would love that. After becoming a monastic, I still like that, but I don't have much time for that anymore. And now it would be to spend maybe a month at Mount Athos and just away from the world, not to be concerned about what is happening anywhere else, but just focusing on praying for others and trying to save myself.
Who's your favorite musical artist? It can be a band, an individual, but...
Chicago, the Doobie Brothers, Earth, Wind and Fire, Bonnie Raitt, these kind of guys, the Rolling Stones, early Michael Jackson, these kind of things. That's sort of the cultural music. If I go a little bit further into the classical stuff, I really loved listening to Pavarotti.
So what's your favorite movie?
Favorite movies, I mean, I have so many in my life that I really enjoy, but just to name a few, there's the movie Patton. I love the Star Wars series, Shawshank Redemption, and then I'll add one more, Gladiator, because of its story about the Roman Empire and what was going on in the arenas, and how a man who was a Christian got through the disaster of losing his wife and his son. Beautiful story and inspirational. And there are many other ones, but those are sort of the few that come to mind.
You mentioned there's a lot of Slavs in this area. Is that one of the reasons the diocese is set up here, or is there some other? Was it that they were on their way to New York and just overcome with the beauty, so decided to stay, or how did that work out?
Well, they showed up here at the end of the 19th century, early part of the 20th century, because of the work that was available to the people of the Carpathian lands. And so the diocese itself, headquarters, only occurred because of some historical portions of the diocese's history where the cathedral originally was in Connecticut, and because of a dispute eventually ended up here in Johnstown. They were getting ready to build a new church, and they decided to build a cathedral here in Johnstown.
Over the past 2 years, the COVID-19 pandemic has raged through the world. I mean, I don't know another way to put it.
That's the way it's been.
How has that impacted you and your ministry and your faithful?
Well, I think we experienced what a lot of people experienced, and to tell you the truth, it has damaged us in ways we haven't even fully figured out yet, I believe. Of course, many people were frightened, and rightfully so, to be cautious, but they have resisted coming back to church. Of course, we had the question about the distribution of the Eucharist and methods. Of course, all the controversy and stress created by that. The amount of giving that was done in some parishes actually went up as opposed to down. Everything was stressed and damaged. The question will be, can we heal from the damage, or is it a long-term problem that if it is that, then we have to get creative in getting the people back into the church?
Absolutely. So what's your greatest fear?
My greatest fear is God. And I'll say it this way. When I was about 11 or 12 years old, my family and I had gone to Greece, and my grandfather, again, the priest, told me, Yorgo mi fovasi kanenan anthropo, mono ton theo. George, which was my baptismal name, fear no man, only God. And the reality is, if you fear God, you don't need to worry about anything else. That's enough fear. So that's my greatest fear, of course. And as a human being, I have other fears, but the greatest fear is the fear of God, and that somehow I will not be the son that He wants me to be, that I will disappoint.
Now, as a secretary of the Assembly of Bishops, you are intimately involved in the movement for Orthodox Christian unity in this country.
Sure.
What excites you most about that movement?
Well, I think it's an opportunity that's 10 years so far, the Assembly here in the States, an opportunity for the hierarchs to get together, to know each other, and to cooperate in things that we can do together as a form of unity. But I think that the reality is that if we are to remain viable as a faith group here in the States, we have to be more united. And the reality is that a lot of our lay people are already united. If we look at some of the agencies of the Assembly, IOCC, OCMC, the prison ministry, these are all kinds of Orthodox Christians of many jurisdictions who are working on an issue, whatever that issue is. And so they are unified on issue number 1 or number 2. Eventually, other things will happen in the same way. The new agency for young people and young adults is another way of uniting the church. I think that's exciting for us because although we come from different backgrounds culturally, and but you know, things work if there is a will. The Carpatho-Russians have someone who is Greek by heritage, and it's not a liability. I think it's an advantage that when we get together, all the cultural groups create a tapestry. So we're not like a melting pot, like they say in America. America is and so that's what's exciting for me. And I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, but I believe in your lifetime we will see a unified church in America.
What's your favorite hymn?
Well, I would say that I have several hymns that I love, but the one that I try to chant every Sunday prior to starting the services is the fight song of Holy Cross, Soson Kyrie.
Would you mind chanting it for us?
I will try. Soson Kyrie ton laonsu Kevloison tinglironomiansu Nikas tis Vasilevsin Katavarvaron Dorumenos Keton son Philoton Viatus Stavrosu Politevma.
Beautiful.
Thanks. I have enjoyed this tour of Johnstown.
I have no idea where I'm going.
You're doing just fine.
I'm just driving around.
You're doing just fine. You're showing us all the highlights of Johnstown. What can I say?